I'm doing stuff I want to see and hear. So right now, this has no other form other than I'm going to put it online with your permission and let people listen to it. But
Okay.
this topic, I've actually been interested in this since you told me once years ago about your call to ministry. Um, so if you would, take as much time or little as you want. Just if you could describe to me what was it like for you for that initial call.
Um, well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. The longer you are in ministry, the less you talk about your call story,
Mm,
not unless you're talking with someone who is recently called into ministry or going through ordination. So this gives me a time to reflect. It was in 1987. I was a senior in high school,
mm,
and my father owned a painting contracting business. And every summer, from the time I was 14 until the time I was a senior in high school, I would work for the company. And prior to this, I had been a member of Peaceful Baptist Church in Lynchburg, Virginia. And during that time, the pastor then, Pastor James Cobbins, must have saw something in me because every Sunday I was the worship leader.
mm.
And so, as 17 and 18-year-old, I was the worship leader of that small church. And one particular Friday, I never forget it. I was painting a house in Westburg, Virginia, and I remember the name of the house, the person who lived in the house, Mr. and Mrs. Angel, because they were, well, Mr. Angel was a baseball coach of mine when I was probably 9 or 10 years old,
Oh.
and we were painting his house, and I had gotten pretty good by working in the family business, and one of the criteria of being a good painter, especially when you're working on the outside, of which we were doing that day, is to be able to paint windows and doors. And I was painting a window on a step ladder, and as I was painting that window, I saw myself behind the pulpit, and I
Mm.
heard a voice speaking. So I was not the only one who was at the house painting that day. A couple of other painters were, and I got off the step ladder and I walked to both of them, and I was like, "Did you all call me?" Because I heard my name. They was like, "No, we didn't call you." And so I went back and I got back on the ladder and started painting the window again, and I saw myself in a vision standing behind the pulpit, and I heard somebody calling my name. So I got down off the step ladder again and walked to the very same painters, and they were like, "No, man, we didn't call you." So I went and I again started painting that window, and the same thing happened the third time.
Wow.
And I got off the ladder again after seeing myself uh, standing behind the pulpit preaching. And after the third time, you're asking the same question, and they painters and those
Right.
guys, they really knew how to express themselves. They looked at me like I was crazy.
That's
Like,
right.
I told you two previous times that we didn't call you. What was going on? So needless to say, I was nervous, and when I reflect back on it, I don't know if I did not know what those visions meant, or I was just in denial of it. So that particular Sunday, I talked to my pastor, James E. Cobbins, Peaceful Baptist Church in Lynchburg, Virginia, and Pastor Cobbins said, "Well, this is what I always knew. This
Mm.
is your call into ministry. The Lord is calling you to preach." It is then, Brother Kendall, that he gave me some advice that I will always thank him for. I was on my way to Radford University, and I had had some conversations about playing on the baseball team, so I knew that I would have to try out and make the team. And he was excited about me going away to school, and he was excited about the potential of me playing baseball. And I think deep down inside, he knew that that calling was the beginning of preparation for the calling. That the calling did not come to fruition right then, but there were some steps that had to take place. So he told me, he said, go to school, play baseball. When it gets to the point where you can stand it no longer, come back and talk to me. So that's basically the call story.
Wow. And just to follow up before I stop, how long did it take before could you not stand it? How'd that resolve itself?
Well, that is, I think that's a part of the call story too. And I was gonna keep on going, but I thought I was getting too long.
No.
So I did go to Radford, and Radford was a time of maturity and matriculation. Baseball didn't last long because I realized that I was missing out on all the fun. Baseball, 50 games during the fall and 50 games during the spring, and it's a hectic schedule. And the people that I was meeting, they were having a ball.
You eventually pledged, though, right?
yeah, and that has a part of it. So I just realized that baseball wasn't for me. So I called my dad and told him, look, I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to stay in school. So once I was in school, I did what a typical college student did. I partied, had fun. I did in 1989, spring 1989, I did play Jamaica Sci-Fi. And I was on and off dating my high school sweetheart. And so Janice and I, we were dating since 10th grade in high school and off in college. And she became pregnant. And once she became pregnant, I never forget it. I felt compelled to tell my pastor about it. And James Cobbins expressed to me the fact that he was disappointed that I was having a child out of wedlock, but he was happy to know that if I did, it was by her. And so I never forget, she went into labor on February 3rd, 1991. And we went to Lamar's class and all of that. And I never forget, the nurse came in and said, look, we got to get this baby out because the umbilical cord is tied around his neck. And when, as you know, we later named him Marcel Zachary Dalton. When Zachary came out, he was blue. And doctors and nurses came out of everywhere. I'm trying to see my baby, and they pushing me to the side and went to him. And at that point, I said, Lord, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Save my child. Save my child. And he came through. And 4 days later, he was out of intensive care, and we were bringing him home.
Amen.
And they said that he wouldn't be able to hear. He would have eyesight problems, which you know, none of those he has.
He's
Uh,
thriving.
yeah, thriving and doing well 30 years later. And the Lord quickly reminded me that I had made that promise to him that if he saved my child, I would do what he wanted me to do. So I went and talked to my pastor, and that prompted him to schedule a trial sermon, which took place June. It was June 9th, 1991.
Wow.
So we're talking about 30 years later, right?
Yeah. June 9th's my birthday. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It was the second Sunday in June. I never forget it. So that year, that February he was born. That June, I did my initial sermon. That July, I was finished undergrad and commissioned to the United States Army as a second lieutenant.
Wow.
That August, I was married. And then that September, I was in seminary. And that October, I was in my officer basic course. So all of that happened in that particular year.
Wow, the Lord wasn't playing with you.
Now, the interesting thing too, and let me go back, because whenever I see Zachary, I'm often, especially when times get hard in ministry, I'm reminded of the commitment that I made to God. So when times get difficult, and I see him, it reminds me of the promise that I made the Lord in ministry. And so I oftentimes tell him that, but I don't think he quite understands it. The other thing is that I have to give James Cobbins kudos again, because when I was thinking about what seminary to go to, I had three choices, because I had finished a predominantly white institution, Radford University, and I wanted a Black experience.
Let me ask you real quick, what was your major? Was it finance?
Finance, yeah. So going to a Black seminary was a must for me. So there were basically only three options as far as accredited seminaries go. I lived in Lynchburg, Virginia. Virginia Seminary and College was not an option, because even though it was great in its heyday, it was not accredited. And James Cobbins told me, he was like, you got to go to an accredited school. So I applied to the three accredited Black seminaries. I applied to ITC in Atlanta. I applied to Howard here in DC, and I applied to Virginia Union in Richmond. And Janice was in school at VCU, and so it was important for me for her to finish, because that was a promise that I had made to her father when I had mentioned to him that she was pregnant with Zachary. And I was painting, had applied to all three schools, and again I was painting the particular summer of my graduation. And I was painting a lady by the last name Royal, Miss Royal. She was an educator in Lynchburg. And she had two sons, or has two sons, both are still living. One of them, Frank Royal, who is a dentist in Richmond, a retired dentist in Richmond, and both happen to be men of Omega Psi Phi. He called his son Frank Royal because he was a long-time trustee at Virginia Union. And she told me, I'm going to call Frank. She was like, you going to Virginia Union. Don't consider anywhere else. You're going to Virginia Union. My sons went there. My son is the chair of the trustee board. You're going. So that is an influence of a teacher, a retired teacher. So the next day, I got a call from Frank Royal in Virginia Union, basically saying, "Look, you are accepted, and here's a little money for tuition." So
Praise God. Wow.
that's my call story in a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor.